about my everyday life and what I do. And I love performance art because it gives me permission in some ways to experiment, because that's kind of what it is. You're experimenting in spaces that you're very familiar with, or maybe not so much, and you're moving your body in a different way.
Well, I think what
Yeah,
you just said is important, that you're experimenting in space.
exactly.
It's funny. Don't I don't know. In the last few years, it's very difficult to kind of like nail down what I do. Like I'm an artist, but I do a lot of different things, and it's
Yeah.
hard to explain to people what you do. They're like, oh, it would be very easy to say like, oh, I'm a painter, or I'm a sculptor, or I'm a photographer. The thing is, I'm all of those plus a whole lot more. And I'm not saying that, in an egotistical way, like, oh, that and a whole lot more. I'm like, no, I do a lot of different things. But lately, in the last couple of years, I think to maybe give it a label, I say to people that I'm a performance artist. And I never really thought of myself that way, because my work manifests itself in a lot of different forms. But
See, I've always thought of you as a performance artist.
Yeah, it's weird. I never thought of myself that way, but I guess.
Is that because performance art maybe has those connotations attached to it?
I think
like,
so. I mean,
yeah,
like
theatrical.
Yeah. I mean, like I was very much inspired. Well, I mean, I was inspired early in my career by painters. And a lot of the painters that I was inspired by were from the New York School and the abstract expressionists. And there was an aesthetic there that I connected with, at least visually, and from a physical component. And then from a conceptual level, I was always attracted to performance artists like Joseph Beuys and Bruce Nauman, and their aesthetic really stuck with me. And I always kind of felt like, if you can create work based on your rhythms of life, then you have a lot of content to work with. Like, for me, like swimming is like breathing. It's everything to me. It's what I do every day for exercise. It's what I do every day to think. It's what I do every day to meditate. It's what I do every day to create. And, I started thinking, like, how does my body and how do my rhythms in the water connect to all of these other things that I'm interested in? And
I mean, I think, I can honestly say, when I saw like your water drawings, the drawing that you did with the buoys and then your cyanotypes with the maps, I was kind of jealous, because I'm like, oh, that's such a great way to document your swims. That's such a great way to bring your swimming into this artistic realm, because I was thinking how hard it is to record, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's a really, like with surfing, it is very visual. There's always photographs. There's a lot you can do, but with swimming, you can't really take great photographs. People are in the water. You're submerged. You can have someone from above, but it doesn't really capture what you're feeling, because it's so subtle. And so much of it is what you're saying. It's immersive. It's internal. Those rhythms, that meditation, and for those of you people who do it, it is such a profound experience. And I'm interested in what you think. I mean, we don't have to just focus this on swimming, but you bring that up. Two things I'm curious about. Would your art be the same if you were just surfing? If you were just a surfer and not swimming? And, is there something that kind of differentiates those folks who do swim in addition to doing all those things and folks who just surf? I mean, I wondered about that. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm wrong and I'm going off on a tangent, but, there's not that many there isn't many performance artists who are watermen the way that you are, and who surf. It's all very much kind of two-dimensional and pictures in the visuals. And I think the fact that you swim, I think it's because you're connecting to that very immersive experience of what it is to be in the ocean, and you're trying to record that and put it out on paper. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm curious to what you think about some of those ideas.
I I think that one definitely informs the other.
Right.
And I always say to people, like, if I don't swim and I don't train, then I can't be, as good of a surfer as I hope to be.
Mm.
I may not surf the best in the lineup, but like I'll out paddle anybody. I'm sure of
Oh, I
that,
believe
you know.
that. Yeah.
Um, and I can paddle all day long. No, but like one definitely informs the other. Um, and when I'm surfing, I'm thinking, and I think maybe Kris Chatterson uses surfing in the same way that I do, is that it is very spiritual, it is very meditative, and when you're out there, you're connecting with something that's much larger than you.
Mm.
And I think we can all say that as surfers, but I do a lot of thinking about my artwork when I'm sitting in the lineup, or when I'm swimming laps in a pool, or when I'm swimming miles in the ocean, because it it calms me. It creates space for me to think. There's no other place in my life where I'm able to find that solitude. Um,
It
so
declutters the mind.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's what was special about the other day when we were out surfing is it maybe it wasn't the best waves, but there wasn't a ton of people. There were waves. It was a beautiful day.
Oh,
It was warm, but not like super warm. It's still a little bite of cold in the air, and you could just breathe and kind of just take everything in, and you're not stressed for out paddling someone to get a wave or jockeying for position. You're just letting things come to you
right.
and taking it as it was coming. Those are the times for me that are special, and that create that experience that you bring with you out of the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it seems like, Kris, that you like from what you've told me, and you had a couple posts about it on your Instagram, you often make your surfing experiences, in addition to thinking, as you said, and meditative, you kind of make those experiences into an artistic experience by taking artifacts like the stones that you've said. And
Mm-hmm.
I know you told me that you take a moment to breathe in the water or taste the water where you are to kind of ground yourself. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's like a thing that's a thing that you do for yourself, but it also for me feels like it's an intentional thing. And so you're making what you do into your art and vice versa. And that kind of comes through into your work. It comes through not overtly, but it's sort of there. Yeah.
I have some weird rituals, and I had them when I swam competitively in college too. It's a lot
Okay.
like a baseball player. You read about
Yeah.
baseball players; they'll go through the same like strange habits and rituals before they get up to the plate and hit, because maybe it's superstition, or maybe it's ritual. And I have, like, one of the things I always do is, like, when I enter the water, the first thing I do is I open my mouth and take a taste and swallow the water. And one of the things I always do when I leave the water, whenever I'm swimming or surfing, is I look down, and the first stone that I see, I take it with me. And that drives my wife a little crazy, because my house is full of rocks. They're all over the place. They're in vessels, they're in bags, they're in corners of the house. And, like, I just kind of feel like, by taking in the water, it's kind of like shaking hands with the place.
Mm-hmm.
It's acknowledging it. And, like, I know it sounds corny, but, like, you're connecting with it. And that
I mean,
stone that you take home with you is the energy of the place that you get to have with you. And sometimes I have stones, like, on my desk. I'm like, oh, I remember that time when I was out. I remember when I took that, and then other ones are just random,
right. Um, I mean, for someone who, when we said at the beginning, you were talking about place. And how did you describe yourself again artistically? As a place driven, you said it in your own words, but I think
Oh,
I mean, the fact that you're grounding yourself in those experiences and that comes through your art. I mean, I'm interested if you could talk a little bit about the importance of place in your work and why you choose, like, how do you choose a site to like do the clam painting or where you chose to do the swimming? Like, I'm curious to know about your processes of choosing places, the importance of place, why you choose to, make your work sort of in a transient way in a certain place, as opposed to just putting something on picture. If that makes sense.
It's funny. I hate to say this, but like, the older I get, the more distance I have from the beginning of my career to like where I am now. And I
Sure.
I can now kind of like retrospectively say that like for the longest time, like I've been making work about place and my connection to place. And I've lived and existed in a number of places, but the thing that binds all of those places is water and my connection to it, and how I try to understand that place is through interacting with it. And by me interacting with place, there is a performative aspect to that. And, how I enter the water and what I do in the water and the artifacts and the stones that I take home with me, those are kind of records that I bring with me so that I can study and understand that place and my relationship to it.
And mark making as well, making lines. I mean, I see that come through in your work too, whether it's the graphite, whether it's, that's kind of, that's what attracted me, because I'm excited about when I see, different line work in all different ways. And that's kind of what I see is that sense of, taking those artifacts, but also making a line, like when you're surfing, there are lines being made, but they're gone, but it's still mark making. And I think that's a really interesting thing that I see in your work.
Yeah. I've always, as a young, you can actually see behind me, like, there's a lot of, as a young boy, I was always attracted to maps, and my grandfather had a house out in Greenport on Long Island, and I would go out and stay with him, and he would go to this nautical shop. It would have like tchotchkes and historical artifacts and fishing tackle, and it was this store called Preston's, and I loved it to death. And I would go there and I would like put my face up to the glass of like all these different vitrines and look at like all of the brass ship bells and everything. They were like magical, but like the thing that I really loved to do was just stand there and like look at the maps, because they were so, I remember as a little kid, they were so abstract, because you have no understanding of scale and place and geography or anything. I didn't know what any of these shapes, forms, or lines or numbers meant. But he noticed that I liked them, and he bought a whole bunch of nautical maps and had them laminated, and he turned them into our kitchen placemats. And every night, like, he would give me a new placemat, and it was a new map, and I would just stare down into it like it was a puddle of water. And I think in those moments when I was like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years old, like staring from above down onto those land masses and looking at the ocean and like wondering about scale and like where I fit, was really important to me. I think today, I'm still obsessed by maps, and I'm obsessed by the rhythms of wave patterns and how they interact with land masses, and where do I fit? Where do I exist, and how small or how big am I? In that scale. So yeah, I mean, I guess
it's like you were like a baby chicken, when they imprint like the little birds, and you had those maps that were like imprinted, seared into your head, and that's what sort of comes through.
I think that's a great segue into, I think, one of my favorite pieces of yours, which is water drawing. where you swam with buoys out into the ocean.
Yeah.
And so all of those questions you had, I think you were posing those same questions, but you were literally putting yourself out there